Tervetuloa tänne Aalto-yliopiston ylioppilaskunnan edustajiston kaudelle 2018-2019 ensimmäisen kokouksen
2017, first meeting,
Nyt on Korean keskiviikko 15.
2017, it's the Wednesday, 15th of November 2017. And it is 8:25, opening the meeting, moving to item 2, recording the lawfulness and quorum of the meeting. Recording the members of the council who are unavailable, disqualified, ineligible, resigned, and who are present. So basically we are listing out the people who are here and who are absent. So, hello to the new representative council. It's nice to see as many fresh new faces and some old faces as well. But I will yell out your names one by one and acknowledge that you're here so that I understand that you are present when you hear your own names being said. So let's begin. Alright, that was everyone. I won't promise that I'll be able to pronounce your names the correct way, so bear with me. Come the next meeting. So do we have anyone here whose name has not been mentioned? Sam Henry Miettinen. Spare member? And we also have another substitute present. Which group? Okay. That being 44 members. The record state we have 44 members of the representative council present. Closing item 2, moving on to item 3, recording lawfulness and quorum of the meeting. So, let's read this whole thing so that you know what kind of errors you should look out for. So according to the regulations in section 17, we're discussing quorum. We have quorum when we have at least 25 members of the representative council at present and a chairperson or vice chair of the representative council. This fact has come to the previous council as well. So we need 25 members present to be able to make decisions. We don't need half, rather a bit more. Also, in Section 8, it's stated that the invitation to the meeting must be published on the official notice board, which is at Otakari 11, and on the Student Union's website at least a week before the meeting. The representative council members must be sent the invitation to the meeting 1 week prior to the meeting in Finnish, English and Swedish. I so decree that we have at least 25 members and their chairperson, so we have quorum since the invitation has been sent 7 days prior to the meeting and all the requirements have been fulfilled. So we have lawfulness and quorum. Closing item 3, moving on to item 4. Summarizing 2 scrutinizers of the minutes and 2 vote counters. We need 2 scrutinizers of the minutes who go through the minutes after the meeting, check that it's okay and sign it. And we also need 2 vote counters because if we have some closed votes. We also have this kind of custom here because we need substitutes for both posts, so that the scrutinizers of the minutes will act as seconds to vote counters and vice versa. Thus meaning we need 4 names of different people for each meeting. So it's always nice to think of beforehand if you're one of those. And what we do in practice is that people point out other people who could be available. It's not a very big job, so opening discussions. Do you have any representatives? And Fielman is up for scrutinizing. Yes? Request for floor? So, Lemström and Hemminki proposed for vote counters? All right. Miettinen is not a member of the student union, it seems, but is as a stand-in member, so do you want to note that? I'll let him sit in still. Okay, we need also 1 more scrutinizer of the minutes. Who? What's your name? Nieminen? Is volunteering. Good. So we have 4 people, so I'd close the floor. We will have for scrutinizers of the minutes the aforementioned people with substitutes and for vote counters same to decided. So, closing item 4, moving on to item 5, confirming the agenda. The agenda has been given to the members of the Representative Council with the invitation to the meeting, and I propose that we accept the agenda as it is. And also say that since we have a short meeting today, let's not have a break between the meeting if we have anything special. So at this stage, usually we decide, the chairperson goes through several facts of the agenda if there's something specific. So let's just run through the meeting proper. So, accepting the agenda for the meeting. Accepted. Closing item 5. Moving on to item 6, announcements. And in announcements, if you have something that you want to announce to the Representative Council or to the members of the Student Union in general, this is something that you may do so by asking for the floor. I might announce that a great job. Our percentage of votes were 33.8, so out of all AYYE Representative Councils, well, counting the first one, you are the highest trust, so congratulations, based on the number of votes given. Any other announcements? No. So, closing item 6, moving on to item 7, which is stating the groups and compositions of the Representative Council. It says on the regulations that in the first meeting, which is this meeting today, the groups are stated nominated if there is no other differentiating opinions over the situation. So, the Central Election Board has verified on the 10th the vote results. So these vote results have been published on the official notice board of the Student Union. In addition, we told you that you should inform that if you wish to form groups in another manner than has been in the electoral alliances, coalitions, and our current setup should be clear. Yes, can you please have it up on the board? If you have any changes you wish to do at this stage, please do so now. So, for Chem, we want the vice chair to be changed to Kettunen. Then Palmu, and from there. For Luova, the chairperson would be Sade Palmu, vice chair Pinja Raitonen. So, chairperson Palmu and vice chair Raitonen. Then your name. So, for Skisma, Vesinormi and vice chair Seppälä. Anything next? For Oikea Aalto, vice chair David Rossen.
Eli Oikea Aalto,
PJ Tiimonen, vice chair
ja VPI Rossen.
Rossen. Yeah.
Eli Skisma puheenjohtaja Vesinurmi ja sitten VPI Lauriset. Oliko niihin ryhmäkokoonpanoihin jotain?
Any group composition changes? Hurrah.
On oikein, vihreämpi auto.
So it's correct. Good. Let's check the group compositions. The Secretary General can open the documents soon, so... So here we have the list of all members of the Representative Council and substitute members, and they should have the correct group listed. No, wait. Kylterirengas is a single group, is it not? So Kylterirengas is the only group that is different from the electoral alliance setups. Nobody else has informed us of any changes.
Selvä.
All right.
Eli näillä mainituilla korjauksilla
with these changes regarding chairpersons and vice chairs, and this in our papers, this error more like that Kylterirengas coalition form a single group. With these changes, yes. So, moving to decide, the Representative Council has decided to state the group compositions of the Representative Council decided. Closing item 7. Moving on to item 8. Preliminary discussions on the Representative Council committees. So, before we go into personal choices, I thought I'll kind of do this kind of preliminary discussion regarding the committees. If the Secretary General can get up the presentation regarding the issue. So in short, the Representative Council set up, well, during this year, 2017, at the start of the year, we formed up these committees. And in a nutshell, what is a committee? It's an organ of trust which assists in decision-making. And parliamentary, when we say parliamentary, we say that we aim to get a broad representative base out of all groups. And we also have these. And we have these so we can have more meaningful conversation in the meetings. So, to you, it offers more in-depth information on certain subjects. It eases preparation and our discussions with experts, so that a group and the Representative Council as a whole is more well-informed, and to make these meetings more concise and a bit faster. So if you are more actively involved in the work, you don't have to go through things here in the meetings, rather in the committees. And here, this year, we had 3 committees. We had the Community Committee, the Societal Influence Committee, and the Financial and Real Estate Committee. So, in broad strokes, there's some listings on what these committees have done. About 1 meeting for each committee between each Representative Council meeting. And we've had a committee consisting of Representative Council members. We also have 2 people who have been named as secretary to the committee and help with the meeting organization. So, a short discussion. We could take this kind of an introduction, what the committees are, and I can say that this is kind of an advertisement speech. So, in the next meeting, 29th in this month, we will choose our committees. And thus, at this stage, we want to raise this subject and raise this topic, so you should apply and you would be interested in applying. So at this stage, we have the preliminary discussion, and you can have requests for floor. So in 2018, what will the committees be like? There are a few questions here which we could go through, which is how many members per committee. So question 1, what would be the optimal size of a committee? If we have people who have been in committees before, you could have some insights on this. And number 2, how many committees? There's no set-in-stone rule that we should have 3 committees and they should be these exact committees. So discussion is open on the subject. I also have one more slide here. It's kind of my own viewpoint and kind of grounds for these 2 questions. You shouldn't overthink it, but the third point is that I think that these means and these ideas of the committees should be discussed after we've chosen the committees and they can decide on them themselves. So for this preliminary discussion, this topic is not that important on deciding what and where, what will be their aims. That's something for a later date. But going to these back to these 2 questions. So, size of the committees and number of the committees. Opening the floor for discussion. First request for floor. So, Seppälä. Regarding size, we had 9 people in a single committee. I'd say 10 would be the optimum. It's of course that not everyone can make it to each meeting, but it's also been. So about 9-10 people is pretty nice, and I think that the next committees should have the same amount of members. But, after we've formed up this kind of concrete aims and goals, and then we could set up these things later, but not. So here we had comments that about 10 people is good for size, and we should have more than 3 committees or so. So, I've been in the community committee, and I should just want to talk about, like, we shouldn't go a bit over, not much over 10 people, because it's hard to discuss things flexibly and in an efficient manner with over 10 people. In the community committee, we have had a good practice that the committee on its own has been able to decide on things. And the topics, well, of course, the topics we receive from higher-ups, but still, these are issues that have been pertaining to the community committee. And I myself have felt that this is a working model. All right, other comments? You can just talk freely. So, regarding size, I agree. I think that if it's too big, then committing a committee might be a bit hard. In our committee, we had this kind of comment from people who participated that we would have wanted more concrete goals and more concrete things to do. So it wasn't really clear what the role, what people wanted from the committee really. On my own part, in Societal Influence Committee, when I was there, I think that if we are going to update our policy papers next year, it would be good. And the Real Estate Financial Committee, based on commentary, has been very, very important, especially when we have these real estate developments here on campus. Thank you, good comments. And Hemminki? Hemminki from Luova. I've been in the Financial Real Estate Committee as chairperson, and we discussed it yesterday with the committee. We came to this kind of conclusion that these have been really good and smart, especially at least from our part. Financial real estate actions have been really important because we have a lot of these projects that pertain to our expertise. Regarding numbers of members, I'd say that we should keep it about 9 members, so we have enough representatives. But we also discussed that each group could have a kind of a personal substitute member, so all groups could be always represented. That was something that was sought after for. So, pretty much nothing else. Do we have any other questions? I didn't think of any other questions. If you have any other points, you can just say them now. At this stage, you could also add that in the term of the committee, how it's perceived. 1 year cycle is pretty good, and the chairpersons could be changed at the same time when the representative council chairpersons has been changed once a year. And at the same time you can fulfill and change the composition of the committee itself. Regarding choosing of chairpersons, we discussed we could have a concrete result on that, but we felt that that's very good that the committees have their own chairpersons comprised of representative council members. And on the method of choosing, we had kind of two differentiating opinions. One, that the committee could choose their representative council chairperson, or chairperson from the representative council members present, or here by voting. Another one. Very broad and very good. You've been thinking of the subject, so that's good. I have to say that if I remember correctly, in chairperson choosing, it says that in our regulation on committees that when we make a committee we have to depict and choose a chairperson for it. So it would be hard for the committee to vote. But we can kind of go around this with good preparation. We have 2 weeks until the next meeting, so if everybody who wishes to be in a committee, and if we all know who's going to be probably in the committee, we can have a discussion on formal grounds before the meeting, so who could be chosen as chairperson in the meeting proper. More requests for the floor? I second the idea of a substitute member. It's a very good idea. That it would have solved a lot of our problems during the year, that we've had these substitutes, and we could run their meetings better. Something I've also thought personally that we've been discussing, that in the committees we could have some more power of our own for individual operating, an individual operation. But yeah, activation was one of the key things that we could do, but we could have some projects of our own, maybe even bigger ones. So these kinds of projects, maybe bigger ones for the committees. It's a good point. We should also discuss that further when we discuss this more. Seppälä was talking about the regulation update and policy paper update, and the advocacy and societal influence committee went through. Well, a policy paper is kind of a paper where what the representative council has approved, which states on what does AYYE think of this theme. For example, we have the policy paper on tuition fees, or we have the policy paper on the Aalto University, etc., etc. So they did a big job in going through all the policy papers and doing some updating and formatting work. Anything else on the committees? Oh, we had one more request for floor. Also regarding the substitute members, discussing that I think that the chairperson's role has been heightened in that how well the committee works and how clearly it works. The community committee did so that we chose a chairperson who wasn't really thought about that also. And for the next meeting we chose, well, for waiting on the next meeting, you should be active in thinking of whether you want to go there or if you have a friend who'd want to be chairperson. So unless we come to the situation where we realize we don't have 3 people who'd want to be chairperson, so and then just do a good preparation work regarding the subject. So kind of a pep talk here. So you should think about these issues well ahead. And last year or at the start of this year, we were kind of had a tight pace. And we're going to have this experimental feeling. And this year, this upcoming year, we will have a more solid base on establishing all the committees and chairpersons, etc. So we can expect more from them in the future.
Okay. Well, so I propose the following, that if you want to join a committee, run as candidate, the starting point is that we will have these 3 committees also this year, and we'll have the preliminary sign-ups according to that, but of course the next meeting we can also decide on something else. But I suggest that you now propose to the new chairperson of the Representative Council elected today if you are willing to run as candidate for a committee, and we'll have this coordinate list which all will see and look through at which committee has a lot of people and which committee has a little amount of people, and then we can decide on it in the next meeting. Any last request for floor on this issue? No? Closing discussion. But please apply for the committees, they're very fun. Making the decision, the proposal was the Representative Council decided to place on record the preliminary discussion on the committees. This has been decided. Closing item 8. Moving to item 9, election of the chair of the Representative Council for 2018. So, the Representative Council always needs a chairperson. I won't do it anymore next year. So we have to choose a new one. And all members of the student union are eligible to run as chairpersons, and the term is 1 calendar year. But you say that the chairperson
sääntöjen 10. pykälässä mainittuja asioita käsittelevissä kokouksissa, eli käytännössä siinä
can be
kokouksessa, missä valitaan
in the next meeting where we may choose the vice chairperson and the board, that new chairperson can be a chairperson in that meeting. And the Representative Council elects the chairperson, and that person needs to have more than half of the votes in order to be elected. You can see the regulations in the agenda. And if you have to make a vote, then we will go through this more in detail. Before the start of the meeting, we have candidates running as chairpersons. We have Onni Lampi. If someone else wants to run as candidate, you can do it during the next general discussion that we will have now. If you, yes, I hope all understood. So open the general discussion. You can now run as candidate as a chairperson. No. Closing general discussion. I propose it's kind of a procedure that our candidate, we have only one, makes a presentation, maximum 3 minutes, and after this you can ask questions from our candidate, about 10 to 15 minutes. And in the end, we also give the candidate the chance 1 minute to repeat, tell again that why we should choose him. After that, then you can make two-seconding speeches maximum. Is this okay with you, this kind of procedure? Yes, I can see nods. Okay. First, Mr. Lampi, if you could come up here, stand there in front of the microphone so that everyone can see you. And also our viewers at home on YouTube can hear you. And yes, now you have the chance to introduce yourself. Hello, I'm Onni, a 5th-year student studying data communications. And my hobbies are kind of fun electronic pop-up things, organizational activities, board games, literature, all kinds of cool things. For now, I've been in this Aalto community. I worked in a guild. I was the chief editor of this magazine, and I was working in the Representing Council. In 2016, I was the group chairperson of AYYYE, and now this year, I'm a member of the board. I'm in charge of real estate and property and housing, and next year I hope that I will be the chairperson of the Representing Council. My vision of the Representing Council is that we could have this kind of a good dialogue between the office, Representing Council, and the committees. Because now it feels sometimes that the members of the Representing Council have this kind of ideas to influence, they want to influence things, but they got these concrete ideas for development, but they're not like implemented. We really don't have the method to implement these ideas, or to process them, and to make the Representing Council into this kind of a organ for actual influencing for all people here. Thank you, Onni. Now we can ask some questions. First, we will have this kind of prepared questions that we have here. The Secretary General. Unfortunately, we didn't have any previous chairpersons here asking these questions, but the Secretary General will replace them, stand in for them, and your group chairpersons probably have this kind of a spreadsheet where there are some questions. But after we have asked some questions here, I can hand out the turns to ask questions. Okay, so Nico, please. This is very boring, these questions. There's many things that you mentioned in your introductory speech. It's nice, Ilkka, that you asked me, because the chairperson is also a very close work partner of the Secretary General and chairperson, very close when working together. But you said that we didn't have the kind of methods to implement these new good ideas at the office, so could you tell us an example of how we could do this? Yes, that's a good question. Now with this good concept, we have this office program. It is updated 3 times a year, and everyone, a member of the AYYYE, can suggest projects for it. So far we have received so many suggestions, and we have informed these people that Ilkka Nico has said that the spreadsheet is open, it's open, you can put your ideas there. But even that, it's not that accessible. You don't know what to put there, how good the idea needs to be in order to be accepted. And so we could have this kind of preliminary discussion in the Representing Council, for example, that's kind of free-form discussion, that what kind of projects you want to see in the office program, and it doesn't matter how they're recorded there, whether if they're grammatically incorrect or if you haven't thought the duration through or something like that. It's more important that we have a lot of ideas there, so we can process the data and pick good ideas from them and develop them further. Okay, and since you have a long background in different activities, what do you think are the your 3 best qualities as a chairperson of the representing council. Well, first, I'm pretty calm, and I don't like that kind of fussing around. And I remember all kinds of things, all kind of regulations, and how to interpret them. And I think I'm pretty good at interpreting these regulations. And as a third quality, I think that was on being a kind of leadership position in a guild or somewhere else. I've also received positive feedback on how well I've managed to inspire other people to do things around me. So yeah, you said that you have remember regulations very well. The last meeting we had this thing that we have different rules and regulations that what's the word? Is that, well, when we founded the student union, when we made the regulations. So what do you think of regulations? Oh, you mean that we received from the previous student unions? Okay, well, I think regulations, well, we talk about this continuation committee. It's the entries directly from the technical university before. So it's word for word. The name has been changed. I don't remember something else. I'm not saying that I know it by heart now, but okay. What do you think are the chairperson's most central tasks and responsibilities, if you could say 3? Okay, the number 1 is that the person needs to be one who facilitates dialogue between the representing council committees and the board. So the person needs to be look that the information is communicated forward. And another thing is that, of course, supervising the actions of the board to make sure that the board acts in a legal manner and that they adhere to the office program and to the Finnish law, for example. And third thing, the third thing could be it's kind of running the meetings. Well, it's a more fun program. For example, we went to some other places to have a meeting, and it's usually from the chairperson's idea how to make people more committed to represent council meeting, to come to the meetings. And who is the actual chairperson? The board chairperson or the representative council chairperson? And the answer was that there is no chairperson to the entire student union. Or the university doesn't have one. What are the exceptions when adhering to regulations? I don't know if there are any exceptions to it, but you have different interpretations if the chairperson interprets the regulations. For example, if you have an issue where you don't know what it means, what it enables, what it prohibits, the chairperson interprets the regulation. So I really can't say anything more to that. Okay. It's good that you don't have to be here completely alone. Hopefully we'll also have a vice chairperson for you elected, if you are elected as a chairperson, of course. So, what kind of a vice chairpersons would you like? As persons or as like from division of responsibility? Well, both. I'd like both the other vice chairperson to be that coordinate these group chairpersons and also these different representing council groups, holds the meetings, but also make sure that the communication works between the groups. And another thing that is important is this trilingualism. I mentioned in my application. So the other vice chairperson would be responsible that we would enable these trilingual activities in the representing council. And in practice it would mean that if someone asks that, or the other chairperson is kind of unclear that what's the division of responsibility like, but we could try this kind of a bold move that their task is just to be responsible for the trilingualism, and then we'll see what happens and what kind of responsibilities that would actually entail. But yeah, that's my idea. And she also mentioned that you also think about different activities outside the meetings. So what kind of these activities could be like outside this moment, for example, how we could develop it. Well, traditionally, the student union has had this kind of evening schools and workshops. We didn't organize them this year because we had the committees, which were meant like to replace them. I think workshops are things that we shouldn't just forget, because when we think about, for example, how to get ideas to the office program, we could have 3 times a year this kind of a office program workshop, which its only task would be that people would come here and think about that, what to add to the office program. Are there things about external activities outside meetings? The trip to Mikkeli, the meeting actually is pretty short, but what happens before and after that issue is pretty fun. So holding the meeting at some sense than at the campus, it's valuable. So we could think that maybe we could visit some place, some kind of cool place. For example, take a tour at first. For example, at the technological museum, and then hold a meeting there. And last, most important questions from me: what tasks are you going to handle, and what do you think that I'm going to handle at these meetings? Well, as a chairperson, I'd like to talk more as hold discussions with the board. For example, that you're the person who does the roll calls and things like that, but the chairperson is the person who makes sure that the board receives the right proposals for decisions on time, that they're translated in time and things like that. Yes, I think that was it. Those are our prepared questions. Next we have your questions. So please, raise your hand if you want to ask something. Seppälä from Vihreä Aalto. Your strong opinion on what we should discuss at the meeting. So will you voice your opinion and how? Well, no, preliminary I don't, because a chairperson's task is not to drive forward their own agenda. The task is to make sure that the board prepares the issue well, and then you can influence the matter if needed. So the chairperson needs to be very neutral. Good question. Timonen from Aalto. Are you prepared to answer all questions in Finnish, Swedish or English, depending on in what language the question is asked? Well, in Finnish and English I can answer, but I don't know Swedish, so I can't answer those questions, unfortunately. More questions, please. Raike for Kyllerangos. In introductory speech, you talked about inspiring people, that you be a person who inspires others. So my first question is that, what are the methods that you use to inspire new representative council members? Do you have any concrete methods for this? And my second question is that this kind of fluency of the meetings, do you feel that it could be improved, that meetings would run smoother, that it would go shorter, for example? Well, I don't know if we got a kind of to lure people in here, because, for example, I could talk about interesting things. Or the other thing could be that we're in a cool place, that people want to come there. So if it's kind of a meeting, which is kind of a boring things, so sometimes we just don't have any kind of envisioning or preliminary discussions, we just have this kind of decisions in the meeting. So then we could hold the meeting at someplace else to make it more interesting. And about the fluency of meetings, for scheduling, look how much time it takes and inform all the representative council members that how much time we have reserved for some item, for example, a preliminary discussion. So at this timetable that we have 10 minutes for this item and then for this, like that. And then we can think about that for a mailing list or a Facebook or the Telegram group, which I'm going to create if I'm elected. And I think that this is enough, the scheduling. And then we could focus more on the issues that the representative council wants to focus on. Yes, good points. Palm from Luoma this year. The representative council chairpersons have had their own office program project. Would you be interested in having like an own project for the chairpersons included in the office program? Yes. The idea this year was that we'd have these committees, but we also had the elections, so we focus more on the elections. We didn't, so we could, for example, support committees more next year for our own project. Okay, last questions. Last question, during this speech. Hemming? As a representing council member, I'm interested in how do you think how much recreational activities do we need? Well, at least we need to have this pre-Christmas party, New Year's party, and for example, like a summer sauna. My hope is that it would be so nice to work here that people would create recreational events themselves after the meetings. That needs to be accepted. Filman, last question. Filman Waltti. You're the only candidate, so how does this make you feel? That is this a good or bad thing? How could you influence this in order to have more candidates in the future? Well, of course it's good that I'm only one because then I'll probably get elected, but it's really difficult to say that. What would be the thing that we could get more people more active to apply for the representing council? Because now I have the feeling that, for example, for the board, there are a lot of people applying for the board, but because now we're managed to be very visible, kind of down-to-earth guys, so people want to join the board. So if we could create this image from the chairperson, then we could have more candidates next year. Did Tappel have a request for floor? Sorry? Yes. So one more. If an employee doesn't adhere to AYY's policies, what do you do? A staff member. Well, if more like of I'm not the superior to the employees, it's Niko or Ritu. Of course, I will communicate this forward to the superiors that people have broken our policies, and then we will talk it through with the superiors, but I won't do more. Okay. Onni, you still have a chance to hold a 1-minute speech, and then you can make seconding speeches. Well, I really don't have anything to add to what I said before, but I hope that you will elect me as the chairperson of the representing council, and I hope that we could have the most fun and best and interesting representing council year thus far. So, any seconding speeches, supporting speeches, that is? No? Then I'd like to ask that does someone want to hold a vote from the election of the representing council, because you can vote no, because the representing council chairperson needs to have at least half of the votes. So does anyone want to actually hold a vote? Okay, no. So we will move on to making the decision. The representing council decided to elect Onni Lampi as the chair of the representing council for the year of 2018.
All right, before we move on, could we take a picture? Yeah, let's take a group picture then. I'll take a group picture later. So, closing item 8. I don't think you don't have to give any specific thanks. You can talk as much as you like later. So I call to the chairperson of the meeting, Onni Lampi. There you go. So you can enter the hot seat, as it were. So, quick instructions on how to lead the meeting. Thank you for your trust. Moving on to item 10, election of the person charged for forming the board. In accordance with the student Union's constitution, we have Noora Vanttinen who have placed themselves. If we have any other people placing themselves as a candidate, we can do it during the discussion. So, opening discussions on the subject. So, no contestants. So, I will close the general discussion on the subject, since we have no other candidates. And here, I hope that we follow the following procedure. We have Noora Vanttinen, single representative, so let's do so as we did with me. Noora will come up and have a 3-minute discussion, and after which we will have 3-minute speech, after we'll have questions, after which Noora can finally make you convinced that she is the one to choose. Is this good for everyone? Good. So, I had this amazing slideshow for this part. No, it wasn't that amazing really, but now you're straight up disappointed. Sorry. So, hello everyone, I'm Noora Vanttinen, and I am applying as the former of the board for next year for AYYE. I could talk forever of my history, but I'll take the key points on how did I end up here. I'd place it in a project called Tempaus 2016, which was done. So that was for my Aalto career the turning point, or the pivot point. It was pretty crazy as projects go, and we weren't really, at sometimes, didn't have the belief that we can do it, but we did. And it brought a certain kind of experience and the will and the belief on what kind of a community we had. I went to the Aalto board to do the brand renewal work, after which I got the opportunity to dive into the heart of the Aalto community. What kind of wishes, what kind of fears do you have for the student union, and draw from that and draw from your visions into this vision that I have, that what our student union can be. And from the vision, we kind of concretified this AYYE, best student living in the world. And this is why I went to gather a team for next year, and we can take these steps closer to our vision, or towards our vision. And here are the first steps that I've talked about, like what kind of focus points we need to take on 2018 that we can reach our goal. Of course, Aalto studentship is a brand, an Aaltolaisuus and a brand. The brand touches all sectors. We can take a critical view on things, and the footwork can be done efficiently. How can we actually implement our findings out of all these hours of discussion that we've done, and implementing that into everyday life? So we can think of how can we say that being an Aalto person is forever. We do need more weight on alumni activities. We need to have the Aalto people from Arabia moving to Otaniemi, and arts people. The student center as well. It's an interesting project, and it will need all the resources that it requires and needs. There's somebody smarter than me, or as smart as me, that said that if the student center is a project that goes through, our community is complete. Well, nothing is really complete, but we're pretty damn close, in my opinion, if we can actually get that. So for that project, I wish to allocate resources and time. Also, well-being. The All Well results came out, and they were really alarming. We have a lot of people under burnout risk. That's kind of a theme that I can see that needs to be kept on top of things when we are discussing with Aalto, like what are we really doing with these results, what are we doing with the problems, and we need to find these concrete means of starting to unravel this mystery. What is this anxiety? Where does it come from? What causes it? How can we start to dismantle it? How can we create a better community for everyone? And in the end, groundworks. We need to get the groundworks up and going. We've had these tight and tough conversations placed on stage. We need to take a critical look on our policy papers, our regulations. Do we have something that doesn't really serve the purpose it was drafted for? Based on these, we can find new things that we might need to create. What do we need to change in order to develop? how can we, a new strategy that's coming up next year, how can we get that ongoing? So I want to get it going in 2019. So I wish to leave this student union for the next board in a better state than when I got it. So in short, who, where, what, and where, etc. next year, hopefully. Thank you. So next up, does Nico have some, actually, we have this kind of a experienced expert with a few questions. The current chairperson, Joona Orpana. And after that, we'll have the questions as per usual. So is Joona ready? Joona's ready. Thank you, chairperson. So, Nora, I'll ask you a few questions from you, and I'll give you about 50 seconds to answer. That's a tight frame. All right, we have the clock. Almost. Ready? So, first question. What values does the student union follow, or should it follow? Well, what values? I believe that equality, openness are things that what we start with, and they kind of flow from our strategy pretty strongly. So, equality and openness. Next question, this comes from your application. How will you enable the fact that the members of board can bring their views and viewpoints forth in a trusting and safe environment? Well, I think that when we are starting to do our work together, we need to map out on what kind of environment do people want to work in, what wishes, what dreams do they have for the upcoming year. We need to find the vision, kind of go through the discussion on their means of operation, how do they bring themselves forth, what kind of space do they need. So based on this, we can work out the culture of action that we will follow for the entire year. And then some practices. Do you have any practices? Well, actually, kind of a core example of practices, I'd say that a closed vote on the fact that will we have a mixed sauna or not. So starting from, don't laugh, this is actually pretty important. We have to think of this. Like, what is the comfort level of people? So on a very detailed level example, what kind of a person would have been the worst competitor in this endeavor, if there would be a competitor? I have to be like a kind of visualize this kind of this amazingly charismatic person standing next to me, who's very, very much more so with more expertise than me, and who's been there in the board for 3 years, who knows everything about everything. But I think that people who'd strike at my uncomfortable zones, somebody who's very sure of their opinions, sure of their stage performance, etc. Kind of a strong leader style type, because I'm kind of a conversational type. So the kind of polar opposite. It would have made an interesting vote, though. Regarding unsure things, what is your uncomfort zone factor there? Well, kind of, it's kind of a question that I don't really have. If we'd have kind of a question from really higher ups on a really detailed level, and I wouldn't have time to prepare for it. So that kind of improvised situation would be really, really uncomfortable for me. But I have practiced. This is not uncomfortable for me, and you could get better at this. And at this stage, I believe that I would actually survive it, but at that stage I would be outside my comfort zone. And what two societal influencing groups should the student union have better relations than they have now? Well, I think that the student union should have very good relations to the city of Espoo, and they could always be better. The city of Espoo is really, really important, and a societal influencer that affects our everyday lives. And in addition, I'd say that, of course, I don't know if the Aalto University is like a societal influencing, therefore, of course, we need to have the best relations to them. Another one would be kind of the SUL, because we can get a lot of our stuff done. So the two were Espoo, Aalto, University and Syl. That'd be three. I want to check because I have to check that of course Aalto is kind of societal, but though somebody doesn't want to see that I forget Aalto. A question in Swedish. So how would you cooperate in Swedish? Can you ask again? Can you say again? I should have said that this is my uncomfort zone. I will ask again. In short and concisely so that I can actually answer this. You can answer this in another language. As I understand the question. So how would you enforce cooperation? This will do as an answer. The question was that how can you, increase cooperation between Aalto students?
What's the most important innovation that students in Finland have developed?
Most important innovation. I think Slush is cool. Slush, the whole ecosystem and Aalto AS. I think that is the why. Well, I think that showcases what students really can do, and that is an innovation by itself.
Thank you. Moving forward, will you have a certain change that you wish to drive forward in strategies, organizations or finances in AYYE? If you do, can you give us an example? Well, the policy paper updating project could be kind of a change in itself, that we need to find these facts. Do we have... I can't say at this stage because we haven't discussed and we haven't opened up those for discussion, so I can't really say that there'd be one specific things that need to be changed. Do you have a certain aim? Well, I don't have an actual... no. So we continue as we have? No. We'll discuss things. On what kind of principles will you form your board? Well, I'm searching for people who have a certain level of competence. They're capable for the role. I'm searching for team players very strongly. And I also believe that the composition change will be, actually clarified when I see the people. I'm kind of thinking of searching for sweet spots, like people with team players and expertise. And now the last question. How is the student union doing? I'd like to quote the branding work and say that overall we have things pretty well. Thank you to the anonymous brand survey answer. So at this stage I can exit the stage. Thank you. Next up, questions from the audience. We have so many new people that if we have many people asking at the same time, I'll ask the names first, since I can't remember all the names. There, Paavola, Fielman, and... Now that you've managed to look at Joona's work, what would you change in your working or your time allocation? What will you change? Well, I think that Joona has done a really great job, so maybe slightly I'd do something that's for me, since it's for me, kind of as discussions with people are important. So I'd increase that, the chairperson discussing with members of the board, something that would be timetabled, not just spontaneous discussions. Then, Fielman? You mentioned Slush, and I was thinking that in Aalto and in our students we have lots of we want to make things, we want to make a stance. Will you, and if you will, then how will you encourage our students to create and develop, what do we do, why we do, and our community by creating services or etc. It's a very good question. I think that Tempos is a good case example on how the student union supported kind of random people that is being brought up organically and can support things. I wish to bolster this kind of culture, that the student union can create this kind of sector out of nothing when we have people that have a good idea and want to do things. So starting from that case, if we've had a person walking into the office with a case like this, I want to offer them the space to do so. So kind of make this kind of more fluid sector system that the Empowers required and give the infrastructure that they need to implement it. You told in your application that you'd wish to raise arts as a bigger activity. What do you mean by artistic activities, and how would you bring it forth to be more meaningful? Well, in that sense, I sense that we have the AYYE 2018, Arts Year 2018 projects, and bring it up for conversation, which has been out on the budget and the discussions. I hope that the Representative Council could approve of some resources so we can actually move some monetary resources towards that, so we can actually get a project coordinator, for example. So these kind of strategic points. Of course, how we cooperate with Aalto in the project. So these are kind of concrete means. This will be clarified later, but I hope that they will go through and forward in discussion so we can place more weight on that. And I would place kind of make this a big project for one board member who would then cooperate with the coordinator, of course, regarding of what do we wish? How can art be seen in Otaniemi, for example? Seppälä. Regarding what you discussed earlier, because Aalto says that they're a societal influencer, I hope we do. How would you bolster AYY's societal influence? Well, societal influence of AYYE, I'd say that I would want to discuss it. Well, regrettably, that is kind of a reality. I'd want to place more weight on the parliamentary elections and so could lobby our wishes forward and then start the preparation in the upcoming fall. How do we prepare? How do we lobby? So this could kind of be a bigger influence in society by AYYE next year. In what means would you develop? I couldn't hear the end of the question. I hope, how would you develop yourself? Well, I hope that I will develop and can become better at leading. Like how can we make 10 people pull on the same rope? Kind of this talking with people. I want to learn about myself, my strong points, my weak points, so that I could bear the hard situations better. How can I respond to difficult situations better? For that's something I can think of right away, but of course a lot on that primarily, I'm starting to do this for Aalto people, but of course I'll do this to develop myself in the face of new challenges. I can tell you more in very, very longer phrases. You mentioned that, well, I would first wish to say that the student union and Aalto spirit are never ready. We can always develop them. And you say that the student center would make the Aalto spirit almost complete, but the student center, to my understanding, touches mostly in the student union KY and TF actives. So how would you ensure that the other Aalto people would feel like they're part of the community? Well, based on the student center, we are doing this plan and this vision work on how can we actually make something that's of our vision for all, like a kind of a meeting point for all Aalto students. So this is something that we need, based on surveys at least. Sorry, I kind of lost the last one. Last phrase. So how could we create, ensure that the members of the student union and Aalto feel like they're a part of the student union who don't go to the student center? How will we make them feel like part of the community? Well, definitely, I believe this has also got a lot to do. Well, AYYE and Aalto are not only, we don't have a sum of three, we have a sum of many more parts. We have many different types of ecosystems. We have the sports system, we have the startup system, and the scene. We need to remember these when we are talking about the Aalto spirit. And I think, how can we in communications bring this up, like these outside of these blocks that we do here, and bolster and communicate of those actively. So I think the student union needs to be active in discussing these, not just be focused on these certain blocks. So all these parties and what's going on in the community, we need to communicate on that, and so that people hear on this and hear about this, where people actually meet each other and discuss things. Then next, Tiitinen. And you mentioned Allwell and the quite harsh results. What would be your three first steps to better students' well-being? Well, my first step would be to discuss with Aalto. The second step would be to lock some resources for this project. And the third step would be that then we will see and ensure that they are fulfilled, that these goals. We cannot make this student union alone. We need to be taking active part, discussing, conversing, and cooperating with the student union and cooperate with the university. That's a big thing. Then the last request for floor. Can I ask that I have not said that I've not been mentioned as a present? Well, we can see you are present, so you may ask. What do you think is the KY's role in Aalto University, and what it should be? KY's role. I said that KY's role is to ensure that Kulttuuri culture is maintained and to provide services for its members. It should be really close because we are a part of each other. KY should feel like it's a part of AYYE, and it should feel at home as any member of the student union or association. Next up, Hemminki. I have two questions. One is really short and concise. You've talked about that you like to discuss things, and it's not always possible to discuss in length, but you feel that you can make decisions quickly without long and lengthy conversations. Yes, definitely, but I prefer that we discuss things. My main question is that as the representative council, because we have these committees, at least the members of the committee this year have felt like they are very significant. How do you see the place of the committees in the future? Would you like to develop them in a certain direction, and how do you see the board members as secretaries in the committees? The committees are very, very good. I utilize them in the brand project. So more responsibilities for people and more things to do for the committees, that board members could have a lot more discussions in the future, and the committees could have more kind of resources to do things.
Right. How do you think AYYE should it have to do more kinds of political, like more or less political activities, especially outside educational politics, and why? So I want to ask you, especially from you. This is a very interesting question, because I think that we need to kind of assess all these things in the moment, for example, like human rights issues. My favorite example is the Tahdon campaign for equal marriage law. Is that when AYYE did the right thing? Because it's exciting, because it's a kind of political statement, but it directly influences our students' well-being, because we are a large, a big sexual minority and the Aalto community and increase their well-being. So the connection is not that clear if we don't open it up. So I think it's that we need to also have the justification for everything, that why is this important, that why is it is important to our members, and then we can influence the kind of these political things also. Yes. Next, Kari Luota. The previous question about these problems that I know that because the workshops are coming up. But what is our focus on the student center project is that my question for you is that are you going to involve AYYE more as part in this when planning the student center project? Of course, and then we will also involve the committee very well. It's a good place of discussion where we can innovate things and go things through. But of course the Representing Council will communicate things that what's going on, and also in the future scenario analysis, that what directions could the project take. I think those are very good, interesting discussions. Next, Palmu. There's some request for floor after Jyri's speech, but now with Palmu, the last request for floor. Asked before. So, how are you going to keep the workload of the board that isn't too much, and that you can also eliminate things? Well, that's why we have action plans and the office program, that we can follow this kind of workload from there. But the discussions with people are important, because we also have to see that when people are doing too much, working too much, and help them, because I don't want that the board would be that all people get burned out when work with the board, because that's against everything, all our principles. So the chairperson needs to have this kind of sixth sense to see if people are working too much, and you can usually see it when you discuss with them one-on-one. And if this happens, then we just have to eliminate some projects, because we just can't complete everything within the year. We have to drop something always. Yes, still request for floor, then let's see how much time we have. This question is in Swedish. How do you want to promote AYYE's international relationships, like international students or international, like to other student unions? With other student unions, for example in Sweden. Well, this year we went to this strategy trip in Norway and Sweden, where we met the local student unions, and they also visit us, and we want to maintain those relationships. And look for a kind of benchmarking trip to somewhere else this time. But the important thing is that when they visit us, we will also visit them. So we keep these relations up, international relations with other student unions. Yes, Simon. How could you promote democracy in the student union so that all members, the voice of all members could be heard better also in decision making of the university? Well, I hope that you're here for that purpose as a democratically elected organ, so I will listen to you and you will tell me what to do. Would you increase the power of the Representing Council or involve it more in decision making? I think the dialogue that we have had with Representing Council about the branding project, for example, has been very good, and I think that you have a big influence on what direction it has taken. So I have noticed that we're a good resource. So I'll develop the Representing Council into this direction to handle other projects this way also. Good from Borarte. It's great that well-being is one of your themes. A comment that I hope you'll use the equality survey that was done before with this project. So how can AYYE increase the students' well-being in the community. What methods do you have for that? Well, I think that, for example, equality, through that we have to invest in involving international students, for example, and have trilingual communications. These are very important things. We have the resources to do that, so we have to do that properly. And well-being is very critical, also through the university. Influences it a lot. So we can do kind of inform people of things, increase equality, and talk about these kind of contact persons for discrimination and things like that. But the university really holds the keys to this. Secretary General had a question. A three-part question. Ask it in 3 parts, please. I can't remember long sentences. Is the chairperson the superior to the Secretary General? And should the Secretary General have this kind of a work contract that is in effect for an indefinite period? So do you want that you have this kind of work contract, that you have got a permanent position? Well, of course, kind of direct your work. So is the chairperson of the board, is the superior to the Secretary General? The second question is that, is Secretary General, does Secretary General sound better or leader of operations? I think Secretary General. So the Representative Council has talked that the Secretary General's work contract should be for an indefinite period or for a definite period? For a fixed period? That's a good question. I really can't answer that. I haven't thought about that, unfortunately. I think my questions are already asked, so... Filman? I came up with a new question because my question was also asked. So Mikkeli. When Arts is moving here, and also the business school. How about Mikkeli? How could we get AYYE to operate better in Mikkeli? Well, when we were meeting Mikkeli, we talked about that what are the services like in Mikkeli, AYYE services, and that's why we connected the service level in Mikkeli with the brand project to see what they're lacking, what they need, and we'd like to make it more visible there because we have the services there, but we need to make them more visible. Yes, and Kuutti. No. Simonen, did you have something? No? No questions here. Okay, well then, the questions have been asked, so now Nora can have a short conclusion speech. Then we can make a decision. I think it would be great, fantastic, if I could form the team next year to make the students' life as good as possible, and I hope you feel the same way. Any seconding speeches? Supporters? Yeah, thumbs up. That counts as a supporting speech. Second supporting speech anywhere? Ah, there, okay. Okay. Well, can I say a few words? Yes, please do. If no one else wants to have a second speech, I'm going to talk about the issue that Nora has done very well with the brand project. She has considered very well the opinions from the Representative Council and modified her work accordingly. So I trust that you will take the Representative Council, involve the Representative Council in your operations also in the future, because you have also done that in the past. And so I support Nora as the chairperson. Yes, the technical thing, that does someone want to hold a vote for the election of the person charged with the forming of the board, that is the chairperson. So if you want to, please raise your hand. So we have one candidate, so we will need to hold an election. So we can move on to making the Representative Council decided to elect Noora Mänttinen as the former of the board. This has been decided. So I'd like Samali Sivonen to take pictures. Because he's a very good photographer. Let's go somewhere with better lighting. So Noora, please come here. Let's have a picture. So maybe we'll take it so that we can also see the representing council. Could we turn the projector off? I think that's enough, yeah. Say cheese. Look here, please. Yes, let's have a hooray! Hooray! So, now we handled all with item 10, so closing. Yes, item 10. Closing item 10. Moving to item 11, other business. Does anyone have any other business to announce? Yes, Sivonen? Or do you want to start? Seppälä from Vihreämpi Aalto. There's a lot of election work, and with the election work, the members of the AYYE talked about moving students under the general housing allowance. So now with AS apartments, we have not made them separate rental agreements to them, which affects the amount of benefits they will receive. So we have communicated this somewhat, but not enough, apparently, because a lot of people have asked us, is AYYE doing anything to remedy this? And we have to communicate this much better to the students, because they're interested in the subject and they haven't received enough information. Yes, I'm glad to say that we will have a notice here for the next week's weekly newsletter, which is being translated right now. So let's start a discussion here, but as to give you a notice, I'm speaking now as a member of the board. We talked because our original intention was that we would change these our 2- and 3-room apartments into shared apartments, and then use our communication systems to get people to apply for them to be as roommates as before. But unfortunately, we have reached a dead end, because now our regulations do not allow it, neither does ARA's regulations, which is why we want to enable this communal living, and we want people to apply for shared apartments together. So the thing we did is that we don't have these family and friend agreements. So it's just as long as you have a joint responsibility agreement, the rental period is decreed according to the longer period residence permit. And this is because of we really can't do anything, because Kela really holds the keys to this. So this is what we will say in the newsletter next week. I'll be glad to answer questions, but not today or tomorrow morning, but at some point, yes. Any other emerging matters? Yes, I have to congratulate all of you, new members of the Representing Council. Congratulations for running as candidates in the elections and getting elected. to this great group and now can decide on the highest decision-making organ on how we want to do things and who we want to do them for us. And so, congratulations, Noora. So let's see if you will have the board, if you'll approve it, if you have to vote on it in the next meeting. And congratulations, Onni, for being the chairperson of the Representation Council. But we have a lot to do in making our student union even better. I've seen many different elections, board elections, ways to form the board, for the student unions and different organizations, parties and companies. And I've noticed that in our way, the method that we use, it is not very good democratically, because a board formed according to the opinion of one person doesn't correspond to the result of the election or to the opinions of the people. So the same kind of like in democracies when we nominate the delegation to SYL General Assembly, where the board nominates the delegation, and the Representation Council really can't have a say on how to elect the delegation to the General Assembly, which defines the policies that all the student unions in Finland think. So I'd hope that we, young, great Representation Council members, could hold a discussion about this during this year. How could we increase democracy in our student union? How could we increase the power of the person who has the vote? That how and what we do in the student union and who are leading us here. And as Winston Churchill said, no one is saying that democracy is perfect or all-knowing. It has been said that democracy is the worst kind of governance unless you count all other forms of governance that have been tried. So that is why we have to cherish democracy in all that we do and promote it in our everyday life, everyday work in the Representation Council, and I hope that we could have more discussion on this in the future during this year. Thank you. A good speech, and implementing democracy is probably all think it's a good thing. So if no other emerging matters, then I'd like to say that we have this after party. Yes. We'd have this massive after party, but very fun if we could go to Dipolis Bistro Tenhola, and you can have a kind of refreshments if you want to. We can congratulate each other on a great Representation Council year that you have in front of you, and raise a toast for our new chairpersons. So I propose that all people who want to will move to Dipolis, the bar. And don't leave yet, we haven't yet ended the meeting, closed it, so if no other emerging matters, we will close item 11, moving to item 12, closing of the meeting. It is 7:57 p.m., closing the meeting.